So I'm here in one of my main camps that I use quite a bit. I use it with my preschool group and my homeschool group, our various groups throughout the year. And I just wanted to show you a little bit more about some different advanced cooking techniques that we use out here, and just ways to be able to stay occupied. Like I mentioned before, once you take care of shelter, water, fire, and food, what do you have left? Like, you're just gonna be out there doing your thing, and you need to stay occupied. You need to keep your mind busy, you need to keep your body busy, and so that's what I want to do. I don't want to. Ooh, fire's getting hot. I don't want to just end up becoming bored and wanting to go home. And I've never had a problem with that in the woods before, so I don't imagine it would start now. So let me show you a couple cool methods. So right back here, I have a whole big pile of stones. So you can see all of these stones here. They are a bunch of granite that I've harvested from a local tree. And these stones are just like the tiny little igneous stones that I picked up to rock boil before. And same idea with these, build a big fire, a nice giant fire, get these stones in there, get it rip roaring hot, get it going for a couple hours. And one of the really cool things that you can then do is, so whatever food you have, you can take that food and let's say you find some ground nuts, which are like wild potatoes. You find you get some fish, you get some meat. Doesn't even matter. This method will work to cook everything just right all the time. And I learned this first when I was in New Zealand, and then also in Papua New Guinea, both times that I was there, and then the Solomon Islands when I was there as well. And the Maori word in New Zealand is a hungi. And what you do is you dig down a pit. So I have this pit right here. You want it to be deep enough so that you can fit all of the stones in. So a pit that is about, for one person or a small group, you get a pit that's got about, 2 feet down, 2.5 feet maybe, and then you just make it as wide as you need for all the stones. And then once you get these stones super heated, you take them, you drop them into the pit. There can be a little bit of water in there, so for instance, today if I was going to do this, I wouldn't bother taking the water out. That'd be okay. Might want to take a little bit out. It's okay if it's moist. You don't want it to be super wet because you want these stones to continually being hot. So you take all the stones, put them in the pit, and then you get some wet grasses, leaves, obviously not anything that's poisonous, and you drop those down on top of the super hot stones. Then you take your food and you lay it on top of those wet grasses. Then you take some more wet grass, stick that on top, and then the dirt that you dug everything out, you then cover that and just put it back right on top of those grasses and leaves, and you let it cook for depending on what you have and how much you have, anywhere from about 45 minutes, an hour, to 2 hours. I've seen whole pigs and halves of cows get cooked this way, and they would leave it in there for like 6-8 hours. They might leave it in even longer, as in they'd get the rip roaring fire going in the afternoon, stone's super hot, put them in the pit, and then put all the meat and all the root vegetables and everything in there, cover it all up, bury it, and then in the morning or early afternoon the next day, open it up, and then you're ready. So in a survival situation, this is a great way. Great way to be able to get everything cooked just right. Another really cool thing that I did with my group is right here. You can see this is our happy turtle. He is he's our cob oven, and so I wouldn't have access to straw out in the wild, but I would have access to dry grasses, and I'd be able to harvest clay and make a cob oven. So let's see. So I think you can see him pretty well. So we do have fire brick here, but you can also just use clay down here in the bottom, and then you just shape the oven into what you want. The way that you cook in that is you start a fire right in there, put in a whole bunch of wood, get it super hot, and then right in the front you can put anything that you want to cook. We have made everything from meat to root vegetables to wild edibles that we found off the landscape. We've even harvested a whole bunch of acorns and pounded it down into flour and used the flour to make wild pizza. So we just mix it up with some water, get a good batter, spread it out, and then we'll just gather things like garlic mustard and some stinging nettle. We have a whole bunch of other plants you can just put right on top of there, and then you just slide that into the cob oven and let it go. Another thing that I really like to do is here we got some flat stones. I'm just gonna grab one. So got some flat stone here. This is not shale or limestone or slate. This is actually some soapstone. And what you could do is you get, my fire is burned down a little bit now. So I'm just tending to it a little bit. But I want to show you what's going on down here. So you can just take a couple stones and put them around your fire. Ideally, your fire would be bigger than this, and then you would be able to just rake coals, and you rake them right underneath. And this stone will get super hot, heats up really quickly, and then from there you can put fish on, you can put meat on. We've using the same acorn flour, we've made acorn pancakes and cooked pancakes right on top of soapstone or the fire like this. Um, Pretty much anything that you would want to cook on a stovetop, you have this ready-made way of cooking right on top of this stone. I've even taken big pieces of granite like the ones that the soapstone is resting on, and I've heated those, got them hot just right next to the coals, and I've cooked fish right on top of those. It's just, it's absolutely wonderful. Gives that little bit of a charred flavor to it. Yeah. So, a few other things that I don't have. I came out to this camp today, and I was hoping that my cob oven had survived, but they're not cob oven, but rocket mass stove had survived. Essentially, it just looks like a boot. So, harvested some clay, put it around a log about this big. We had one log going horizontal, and then meeting it in the back, we had another log going vertical. And essentially, put clay all around it and shaped it so that it looked just like a boot. And just before the clay totally hardened, we take the logs out, and you're left with a little rocket mass heater. And with that, wood burns vertically. You can put it in horizontally as well, and it heats your fire really quickly, gets it super hot, and so you can boil water, cook food very quickly. It's very efficient design. In fact, one of the things that I want to do in my long-term shelter is make a little rocket mass stove. And when I was in northern India traveling through the Himalayas, the families there, their houses would be essentially stone and clay houses, cob houses, more or less. They'd be 2 stories. The lower level had all of their animals. The upper level was where the family would stay. And they would never collect firewood even this thick. I mean, this is, what, 2 fingers, finger and a half thick? Most of their firewood was just little twigs like this, and stuff in between. They would burn everything. It would burn vertically. Had a little vent for airflow to go into the bottom, and then around it they had a hollow. So they had an open area, a fire on top, and down here on the side where you could see. And then the rest of it was just this nice clay structure that came out and then vented and piped right out of the house. So it created a thermal mass that would be heated up, and you could burn these twigs super efficiently, cook all your water, boil all your water really quickly. And in the winter, it was wonderful because it kept the whole top of half of the house warm. And it was just this tiny little thing, maybe about 4 feet, 4.5 feet long. So that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to trying in a shelter. And yeah, firewood is one of the biggest things. So water, once you find a supply of water, then you're set. Once you have your shelter built, then you're good on your shelter. So firewood and food are the 2 biggest things that you have to struggle with all the time. Firewood is is something you just have to go out, have to collect it, have to cut it, probably have to split it depending on where you are. You can just be burning twigs all the time, but you might want something a little bit bigger, a little more sustained. So one of the things that I like to do is if I have an open fire, like I have right here, right now, then in the evenings, I'll take a bigger chunk of firewood. Let me find a good example for you. So I'll take a bigger chunk of firewood, like this, put it on the fire, let it catch so that it starts to smolder and burn. But I don't want the whole thing to go into flame. I wanted to get a bunch of char and a bunch of ash and start to get some flame on it. Something like this, so that it still has a good coal. What I'll then do is I'll dig down into my coals and I'll just bury it. So same idea as the hungy that I showed you earlier. Just bury it. Then in the morning, dig it out and just use it like a regular coal and blow it back to life. That's the easiest way that I found, especially in areas where it's raining a lot, or if it's just super humid, super cold. Otherwise, you wake up in the morning and it's gone. You're done. You don't have a fire left anymore. So that's one of the big things that you need to keep in mind is how do you keep this fire going? Because starting a fire every single day or even a couple times a day is just, it's not an efficient use of time. Lastly, I wanted to show some pottery. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is pottery. These are a couple examples of clay that I've harvested off the landscape, not very far from here. Took it, put it out on a tarp, sifted through, picked out all the big rocks and the sticks, and got everything out that wasn't clay. Found some sand not too far from here. Took the sand and mixed it in as a temper, and then added in a little bit of water and was able to shape it. So these are two different styles of pots. This one is a coil pot, meaning I made a whole bunch of clay snakes, coiled them around and around and around until I got my desired shape that I wanted. And I used a stick paddle to smooth out the coils so you couldn't tell that it was coil. And then this pot, I took as a mold. One of my friends had a large pot that he had made out of coil, and so I just took this, got some clay, and just put it down on top of his finished pot, and made this. And these are great because you can take your clay, put it right over the fire. You can cook in it. You can store water in it. You can make two pots, something like this, one a little bit larger, and then make little holes in the tops of both of them, and then you can have a fire underneath, and then it acts as thermal mass to keep an enclosed space pretty well heated, or to get an enclosed space heated up, and then the little fire burns out. So and the way that you would fire these is you take the raw clay that you've made, put it down on the ground, and then just bury it. Put a huge pile of brush, dead sticks, everything right on top of it, and light it. And then you just let it go. You let it burn out until it's totally cold, and when you take it out, you got yourself some good solid pottery that's fire hardened, that is waterproof. And the nice thing about pottery over something like bark baskets is, as I mentioned, you can just take this and heat it up right on the fire. You can boil water right in it without having to worry about heating up boiling rocks and putting those in. So on top of that, there are always things to be done. There's tools to always be made, animals to always be tracked, to know the movements of animals coming back and forth, so that for hunting or trapping purposes, always being able to go out, scout in different areas for fish, to know what resources are around, what wild edibles are out there. So working on firewood sorry working on firewood, working on structures to keep your firewood dry and out of the elements. So it never ends. There's always something to do. Not a whole lot of sitting around in survival situations. So I hope that helps. Hope that answers some questions about what to do once you have all your basics taken care of, and answer some good questions about how to cook, and some creative ways of cooking, like with a cob oven, with clay pots, and with heated up stones. So hope that this helped you out, and hope to see you in the woods.